Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode number 7, and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. Folks, we have a special guest joining us on today's program. But first, a word from our sponsor. Are you looking for a photographer and are based in the Houston, Texas area? Then look no further than John Steelman Photography. John Steelman Photography is a veteran-owned small business that takes great pride in capturing those special moments in time. For an everlasting memory, no job too big or too small. For all your photography needs, check out John Steelman Photography today. Visit him online at johnsteelman.com. That's johnsteelman.com. Today, we are honored to be joined by Mr. David Toombs, the father of combat veteran Sgt John Toombs, to discuss his son's suicide on the grounds of a VA hospital just one day before Thanksgiving in 2016. This heartbreaking story will help you further understand the mindset of a veteran that is suffering from the wounds of war. Sgt John Toombs did everything right, but the system failed him in ways that cost him his life. This episode will save lives and it will educate you. I know this is very difficult for you, David, but you making yourself vulnerable are saving the lives of veterans. There is no doubt in my military mind that someone listening today will begin to get 1% better and get the help that they need. And more importantly, the educational part of this program will help these veterans learn how to advocate and navigate the bureaucratic waters of the VA. What happened to John can never happen again. Today, we welcome to the show Mr. David Toombs. David, how are you doing this morning, sir? How are you, David?
I'm fine. How are you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm hanging in there, one day at a time, 1% better. That is my motto, and that is how I live every single day. Been doing that for years and years and years. Listen, I want to dive right into this and, everything that you and your family and really the nation have been through since that day before Thanksgiving in 2016. Your son, Sgt John Toombs, was going through some life challenges after suffering the wounds of war during his combat tour in Afghanistan. Ultimately, he would check himself into a VA hospital and ask for help. Can you pick up the story from there, sir?
Yeah, Brian. Actually, he had checked himself into the VA hospital a couple of times prior before he initially went in October the 6th, 2016 to start his 90-day treatment. But soon after coming home from his deployment in 2012, he went in for a few days, and then again in August 2016, he went in for a few days. So it was actually his third time.
Okay, so after the third time, were those 1 day, 2 day experiences, or did they actually finally get to the point to where they were going to admit him inpatient to obviously help fix his, his bout with depression and the post-traumatic stress, and to get his meds right. At what time did that actually happen to where he was checked in inpatient at the VA?
Well, in September 2016, Brian, John hit rock bottom, and he went in for 7 days, which they say 7 days on the psych ward. Detox. It wasn't a pleasant place to be from all the accounts I heard. And then when he got out, they told him, they said, well, we're going to go ahead and put you in for the mental health residential rehabilitation treatment program, which we refer to as MHRRTP, and for a 90-day in-house, basically as a resident, where he would be able to focus and help his PTSD, depression, anxiety disorder. There was a couple things, chemical dependency, and he and I actually worked together. And so every day he would go out to the VA before he came to work and take different treatments, such as acupuncture, different classes. And the longer it drug on, the more he started losing hope in getting in the program. And it was in late September that he didn't show up for work one day, and I knew something wasn't right. And his ex-girlfriend, called me and said that she was in a panic. He had showed up at her house, and by this time he was on 11 different medications. And he finally just throwed his hands up, got a bottle of whiskey, and drove to her house and was acting irrationally.
Mm-hmm.
And that incident landed him in jail for a DUI and verbal assault. Well, after a couple of days, he called me and said, don't bail me out of jail. He said, I need this. Can you call the VA and see if they can get my medications to me? Well, I contacted Alvin C. York, and they were good about getting his medications to the jail. And after a couple of weeks, he actually went before the judge and the veterans advocate in the veterans court here. And they said, well, will you agree upon discharge from jail going to MHRRTP for 90 days? And then you'll be on probation for 1129 after that. And of course, John, he was extremely intelligent and sarcastic, said, you mean I had to go to jail to get what I originally wanted? So he went to jail. He went to the MHRRTP program. I dropped him off at 9 a.m. that morning. And that's when he started his program for which was supposed to be 90 days.
When you dropped him off to begin that 90-day inpatient at the VA, how did he take to the program? Did he start to see some signs of resilience and perseverance?
Oh yeah, like a duck to water, Brian. I would go out every Sunday and visit him, and I would take him coffee and tobacco. And if I had a couple extra dollars, I'd take it. And he was really, he carried 2 notebooks around with him. At first, one of them was just kind of like a pocket diary. He'd slip in his back pocket and write things down. Mm-hmm. But every week that I went and saw him, he was getting back in that frame of mind and attitude like he had when he came home from deployment. Really self-assured, like he believed in himself again.
Mm-hmm.
He would tell me some things he didn't like out there, but for the most part, he actually was looking forward to the treatment he was getting. So it started out really good.
Good. And, I say good as in, he was starting to recapture that purpose again and who he was as a person, as this program was beginning to take root in him.
He truly was.
And when was the downfall of this 90-day inpatient program?
Actually, the downfall that I actually saw happen was right around Halloween 2016. Every Sunday they had family visitation out there, and I would usually go out around noon, hang around for anywhere between 30 minutes or an hour, depending on, what time he was going to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And the following Monday, the next day, he called me that evening, and I remember clear as day. He said, "You're not going to believe this crap. What's happened?" I said, "What?" And he said, "There was a scabies outbreak. We're under quarantine." Uh,
Scabies.
yeah. And I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, they knew about it Thursday. And they let all the family come visit and put us under quarantine today." He said, "So I basically approached one of the male attendants and said, 'What the F are you thinking? You may have exposed a lot of family members to the scabies.'" And that kind of put a target on his back. And it was after that that he began getting written up for being late for medication because, especially in the mornings, he didn't have an alarm clock and it was hard for him to wake up. He had been that way all his life.
Now, this is inpatient inside a VA hospital.
Yes, sir.
All right, so he's there to get better. Of course, highly medicated, going through the program, has already done well for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a scabies outbreak. Things start to go downhill in the program, and now they are berating him because he wasn't getting up on time and he had an alarm clock. Now, the last time I checked, when you're in a hospital, they come up and they get you. I mean, am I missing something here? Or, I understand they're trying to get, veterans independence and getting them back to where they need to be to live a life of productivity. But still, if
Mm-hmm.
you are in a patient hospital in I just don't understand if you don't wake up one day on time, why they wouldn't just come get you and bring you to the group or to where you receive your medications. What am I missing here?
Exactly. There was the day I dropped him off. There was a couple of nurses that were absolutely great, and one of them, her name was Lindy. And when Lindy was on duty, she knew John had trouble waking up, and she would actually knock on the door, crack it open, and just say, "John, it's time to get up," and he would get up. But apparently, some of the other attendants may just walk by and tap on the door and keep going. Um, he had a wristwatch, but he couldn't hear the alarm on it, so he never used it. And this was actually addressed, I have the records, with a psychologist who he really disliked because she prodded him. Uh, just tried to, see if she could just get at him. And she asked him, "Why don't you use your wristwatch?" He said, "I can't hear the alarm." And it's just a real light beep. Uh, and she actually threatened to withhold his Suboxone if he continued to be late for his medication. I mean, and there was one instance he was even written up for being a minute late.
How many people were in this inpatient treatment facility in the VA hospital when all this was going down?
Veterans. I'm thinking in the program, Brian, if I can remember right, approximately 25, give or take a couple.
Now, did they start to pick on John, or was their behavior toward every veteran the same?
Well, the way the other veterans that made contact with me, uh, John was a loner. He kept to himself. He didn't bother anybody, but he was friendly. And of course, a veteran that's being medicated and has issues every day, your, your frame of mind and your attitude may be different. But he kept his headphones in a lot, done a lot of writing, a lot of reading. And it was after that he approached one of the attendants and chewed him out over the scabies incident. That's when he started getting wrote up here and there, being a minute late, 30 minutes late, 20 minutes late. And I think it totaled up to maybe 5 or 6 times.
So now when you say he was late, was he permitted to leave the facility, or is this him remaining in the facility and then just showing up late to roll call or whatever it may be?
Exactly. It was remaining in the facility on the grounds, and a lot of times in the dormitory, and maybe overslept or showed up, a few minutes late for whatever reason. I mean, there were times that he may be in the courtyard, which is through the main building, 100 yards away, and at noon, he had to run to make sure that he got there in time to get his medication. I was actually with him one Sunday and that happened.
Again, this makes no sense because the medication that a lot of these veterans that are on to treat these types of illnesses, they will cause things like this. They will oversleep. The cognitive displays may not always be there. This is why he is in a hospital to get the help he needs. And again, this story is what doesn't make any sense at all.
And also, there was a couple times where he may be in a class and he would start getting, I don't know if you would call it a panic attack or anxiety attack, but he would have to just get up and walk out. And I mean, they didn't like that. It was a very structured environment. Some of the veterans told me it was almost like a penal system. And even his head nurse told me there was times when she could tell that there was something going on in his head, and he would just have to get up and walk outside. And so, that didn't sit well with some of the staff. But then again, like you just said, they're in there for reasons to get help because of what they're going through, and that's part of what they're going through.
Sure, they have to expect this. These clinicians need to know, how to, treat the patients, and not everybody is going to be, that perfect patient, because if they were, they probably wouldn't be there,
Exactly.
So, but the thing that really stands out to me here is that he was successful in this program for about 60 days until everything started to unravel.
Well, actually, it was from October 6th till probably the second week in November.
Wow.
Which he was due to come out in February, so he was probably 6 weeks into it.
Yeah, I mean, that's
6 weeks in a 90 program.
Yeah, just under, what, about 45, 50 days or so. Let's fast forward now. Things are beginning to unravel. And we get to this a few days before Thanksgiving. Does John contact you?
No, actually, it was the last Sunday that I actually visited with him. And I went in to building 11, which was their dormitory and classrooms. It was separate from the main building or the main facility, about a 300 or 400 yard distance. And so one of the nurses that I got to know when I went in there on Sunday, she said, "Well, I think he's in the cafeteria. I'll call over there." And so she called over and they said they'll send him over. And I asked her, I said, "How's he doing?" She said, "Oh, he's doing great. He's one of the few that I don't have to look over my shoulder and give that mama eye to." Well, I took that as being a good report. But when I met him halfway, he was just really down. And I said, "Bud, what's wrong with you?" He said, "Nothing. Just hadn't been a good couple of days." And he just stared at the ground. And John had started studying a program called Smart Recovery. And it's actually S period, M period, A period, R period, T period. And he liked it because he said it was more advanced than AA. It taught people how to restructure their way of thinking. And he told me, he said earlier before that day, he wanted to become a counselor. He found his calling.
Mm-hmm.
So he was studying all that he could about the smart recovery techniques and the science behind it, and actually began teaching a class that the other veterans told me he was great at it.
Hmm.
And I told him, I said, well, look, if you're serious when you come out, I'll pay for the certification. And that's what he wanted to do with his life. And he had actually told me the week before that when he finished his 90 days there, that he was talking to one of his counselors about doing another 90 days in either Prescott, Arizona, or Florida at a
Mm-hmm.
VA facility. So he would have 180 days under his belt and his certification, which that to me, that was really hopeful.
Oh yeah, that was, totally, changing, his life, and to begin to heal others through his experience. And there's not a really better way to do that other than going through it yourself, instead of folks that are trying to happen that have never really been in those shoes.
Yeah, but that final Sunday, when I finally got it out of him, he told me that the new director in that program that had taken over, which when he came in, John was already there, and he was told by a couple of the nurses and a few of the veterans, this guy's a real a-hole. He's going to make an example out of somebody. Be careful.
Okay, so they had some leadership change. They had leadership change. Somebody went in there running a really tight ship, and ultimately, your son, Sgt John Toombs, and this new director, they would end up butting heads.
Well, actually, that Sunday, he told me that he was trying to teach a class the night before, but that director redirected the veterans to an AA class. So he had virtually no attendance in what he was trying to teach. And he said, Dad, he said, this is a song and dance now. He said, as long as you're smiling and dancing, they're happy with it. He goes, I'm not out here because I'm a smiley, happy person. And that's when I knew that, something was going downhill. That would have been November the 20th.
Now, I want to share something with our viewers here and our audience. This is very hard to watch, folks. This is just a few short hours before Sgt John Toombs was kicked out of the program and sent back to the streets. He returned to the VA. He says, I need help. I need help. I need help. He was denied, and he was turned around. They kicked him out of the program.
Brian, do you mind if I correct you on something?
Yeah.
He was kicked out of the program first thing that morning and remained on campus. He never left campus except for he walked across the street at some point around 8 or 8:30 to McDonald's and got something to eat and came back to campus. But he never left campus other than that.
He did not want to be kicked out of this program. He needed help, and he admitted, and he admits this over and over again. Sir, do you mind if I play this video of your son and one of his last moments here with us?
No, go right ahead.
I'm sitting up here at the Alvin C. York VA, where earlier today I was discharged for trivial reasons for, I guess, they made an example out of me. And my only three options now are go back to jail, be homeless, or check myself into the psych ward. And they knew the extent of my problems. PTSD, depression, all that, even more. I won't get into it on here. But when I asked for help, they opened up a Pandora's box inside of me and just kicked me out the door. That's how they treat veterans around here. I came for help, and it just threw me out like a stray dog in the rain. But I appreciate all of the support. I feel very blessed. Thank you all very much, and I love you all. Some of you I love more than the whole wide world.
The final words of Sergeant John Toombs: real, raw, the mind of a veteran in need of emergency help. And he was denied that help. Can you bring us to that call? That call that you would end up getting, sir, that would ultimately change the course of your life, sir, and the life of your family.
Sure. Actually, it started the night before, which was the day he was kicked out. I got a message from his ex-girlfriend that he had been kicked out of the program. And I only live probably about 15 minutes from the VA hospital. So around 5:45, as soon as my wife got home, we jumped in the car, and I said, I'm going to go find him, find out what's going on. So when I got out there, it was dark. There was maybe 2 or 3 cars in the huge parking lots. Most people had already gone home. But I saw the silhouette of 2 people. When I walked up on them, it was John, another veteran by the name of Brian Moore, talking. Well, Brian excused himself and asked John what had happened. He told me everything that had happened. And I said, all right. I said, well, why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and go. You can come back tomorrow, try to get back in the program. He said, no, I'm not leaving the campus. He said, I don't want them to have a reason not to let me back in. He said, I'm going to stay here tonight, sleep in the emergency room. And then in the morning, I'm going to go to the patient's or the veteran's advocate and the director of Tennessee Valley Healthcare Systems and try to get back in the program. I said, you mean to tell me the veteran's advocate wasn't present when you was kicked out? He said, no, it was just the director of the program, 2 nurses and a counselor. And which I thought wasn't quite right, because when he went in the program, there was 8 to 10 healthcare providers on his intake. So anyway, I told him again, we talked from him. I said, come on, let's go. He said, no, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here. So we talked for a little bit longer, and I asked him, I said, John, I'm not comfortable with you staying on this campus tonight. Come on, let's go. We'll resume this in the morning. He said, I'm not leaving. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't make a grown, I couldn't knock him out and put him in the car.
Well, he knew he was not right. He knew that he was not right, and he was afraid to leave on what may happen. It could be, the alcohol and further the drugs, and he did not want that. He wanted to get better. He wanted to be there. He wanted the help. He was pleading. He was pleading with them to help them.
Mm-hmm. And anyway, I told him, I said, well, look, will you call me first thing in the morning so we'll know what to do? Let me know what happens. He said, yes, I will. I said, well, can you stay in contact with me tonight? He said, yes. He said, I don't have any minutes left on my phone, but there's Wi-Fi signal over by the library building. I'll go sit over there so I can text with you. And of course, I hugged him. I mean, like I said, we worked together. Even when I left work and he was still there, every time we parted ways, we'd hug each other and say, love you, bud. And I did that. And I started to walk off, and something stopped me, and I turned around and I said, you're not thinking about doing something stupid, are you? Well, what I was thinking was, is he going to take off on the run? Because by them kicking him out, it broke his probation, and they knew that. And that was what I meant. when I said, "You're not thinking about doing something stupid, are you?" And he looked at me and kind of half grinned. He said, "No, why would I? How could I?" And he looked over his right shoulder, and I said, "All right, just stay safe tonight, stay warm, talk to me in the morning, keep in contact with me tonight." And that's the last time I saw him.
A father's intuition, for sure.
But I had no clue what was coming. I mean, here's something strange, Brian. His whole life as a kid, I always told him, trust your gut feeling, trust your gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was studying to be a smart recovery counselor, he said, "You remember you've always told me to trust my gut feeling?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You know why?" I said, "No." He said, "Because you've got so many more millions of neurons in your stomach and intestinal system than you do your brain." I never knew that. But that's
Gut
something.
health is, yes, the gut health controls your controls your body. Absolutely.
I never knew it. But I wasn't expecting what was to come. I just thought, if anything, that he was going to, at some point in the night, was going to say, "Wait a minute, I could go back to jail for this," and hit the road.
Now, explain what happens next.
We text back and forth during the night a couple times. And the last thing I said to you was like, I'm going to worry about you. And his last text to me was, "You always have, bub." And the next morning when I woke up, Susan, my wife, told me, said, "John posted a video last night on Facebook. He's pretty pissed off at the VA." And it takes me a while to wake up. And I told her, I said, I'll look at it here in a little bit. I got to hurry up and get to work, because it was the day before Thanksgiving, which in the line of work I was in, the day before every holiday was the busiest day. So I had to hurry up and get to work, just in case I had to go pick him up later, or, whatever comes next. So I never saw the video. I get to work and I text him, keep you posted on what happens. And this was probably around, I don't know, Brian, I can't remember, but it was right around after 6 sometime a.m. So I'm working and I get a phone call, and I let it go to voicemail because I'm busy. And then when I get a second, I'll go back and listen to voicemail. And it was a detective with the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department. He said, "I need to speak with you. Can you give me a call back?" I thought, well, John took off on the run, or either they took him back to jail. So I called. The detective, said, "I'm at your house right now." I could actually hear my dogs barking at him through the window. He said, I'm at your house right now. Where are you at?" I said, "I'm at work." And he said, "What's the address so I can come talk to you?" And I told him. I said, "What's this about?" He said, "That's the reason I'm coming to talk to you." And I still thought, okay, he's going to come tell me they've taken John back to jail, or he's on the run. So I'm out in the parking lot having a cigarette, waiting for him, and he pulls up, and I notice he gets out of the car, and then a guy with a lanyard gets out of the car. I thought, what the hell's going on? And when he gets closer, I see the lanyard says chaplain, and it still didn't register. And that's when the detective said, "I need to inform you we found John this morning." And I said, "What do you mean found him?" He said, "Well, John took his life." And, everything's kind of stopped. And it was, I can't explain it, but I just kind of bent over, put my hands on my knees, and I was still trying to comprehend what he was saying. And a lot of it's a blur, but I do remember the chaplain asking me, "So would you like for me to pray with you?" I said, "No, what do I have to pray about?" And Brian, I think that's at some point in that moment, that once your worst fear comes to life, you don't have any more fears. And all John's life, I had this gut wrenching fear I was going to lose him somehow. So I was overprotective at times. And me and him were always best buddies. Me and him left his mom when he was 12 years old. We were friends, we were co-workers, and my worst fear had just come to life.
And that, that just goes to show that you and him had a very special bond. And if anybody could get through to your son, it would be you. And still all the way up into those last moments where you did have communication with him, he still did ultimately taking his own life because he was in so much pain. And when you are in so much pain and you are going through this trauma and this anguish, of course, you are not in the right mindset. And what John did is he ultimately wouldn't, take his own life at the VA hospital on campus, in an effort to raise awareness on what is going on. And a lot of these veteran hospitals, and what he did would also begin a series of other suicides by other people that began to do this for, I think, perhaps a call for help to say, guys, we got a problem here, and we need to get to the root of this problem. And just an example here, after, John was, he began this trend, and it's a horrifying trend. But, later, a year or two later, we had a retired Marine colonel that served 30 years in the Marine Corps, would also take his life inside a VA hospital after denied care and denied treatment of PTSD and his depression. And what a lot of folks don't understand out there is that post-traumatic stress, depression, and anxiety, it does not discriminate. No. This is a colonel. People think, oh, colonels, they live great lives. Folks, we all suffer hardships and anguish in our lives, okay? And so this is not just for the enlisted people, or, just for, the lower grade, privates and PFCs. No, folks, this is a problem that's going on in all ranks in the veteran community. And now this seems to be a continuing trend on when veterans don't get the help they need. They make it a point to let them know, I needed help. I couldn't get the help I needed. So I'm taking my life at the VA hospital where I went for help, and it ended here with me not getting the help I need. So if I can take my life right now in an effort to save other lives, I believe that's what was going on in the mindset of not only your son, Sgt John Toombs, but this colonel and many others out there just like them. Can you explain, after we get through this process, and you're just trying to, get this all, get all this information together, and then you begin to put the pieces of this horrifying puzzle together, were you able to expose something, within his care that was, a definite red flag?
Yeah. And before I address that, let me say something about what you just said about veterans taking their lives, trying to draw attention to the circumstances. To me, one of the most insulting things was in 2007 or 2018, I can't remember, it's still a blur, Dr. David Shulkin, who was the head of the VA. actually in Stars and Stripes magazine, in an article that John was in, said that the reason that veterans are taking their lives on VA campuses is so their families won't find them. And to me, that was a slap in the face. That was denial at the highest level. But
Delay and deny until you die. That has been the VA slogan for years and years now. And, you know, it is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And when the system falls short, someone needs to be held accountable each and every single time in this fact. And in John's case, it was this new director. It was this leadership change that ultimately would cause the death of your son. Where do we go from here? What did you do next? Was there a federal claim in the process?
It gets really bizarre after that. Really bizarre. That day before Thanksgiving, I was still trying to figure out what happened.
Sure.
Of course, the VA, no comment. And the local news stations picked up on it. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing interviews back to back. And the thing was, I want to know what happened. Somebody tell me what happened. And of course, the VA is no comment. And
of course, they never have any comment.
Meanwhile, there are veterans who are so afraid of getting kicked out like John was. They were afraid to speak up, and they were sneaking messages out to me through family members, letting me know that should not have happened. Mm-hmm. That new director had a nickname. They called him Call a Cab, because if you went to him with any kind of complaint or concern, he would say, "Would you like me to call you a cab? I can have your bed filled by tonight." And
again, this is the reason why these veterans are there, is for help. It's not about this director. Mm-hmm. And to have somebody in this power is not only reckless, but it's downright frightening. Mm-hmm. That how are those other veterans now that were sending messages out to you from the inside out feeling in there? I mean, they had to have been somewhat scared, sad, depressed, even more so. They've just lost a brother. They knew what happened. It still happened anyways. And now those guys are in there trying to figure out how they're going to get through the day and what is coming next.
And they're angry on top of all that. And all of these things, like you just said, John's death was not part of a treatment program. I mean, that's something that just compiled what they were already being treated for. And they were angry. They were upset. They were appalled, but they were afraid to speak up and say anything. That's the reason they were sneaking messages out to me. And of course, you know, the next day was Thanksgiving. And we tried to have a Thanksgiving dinner, as strange as it was. We still tried to come together as a family and some friends and have a Thanksgiving. And, you know, my mind is just not having Thanksgiving. It's at the autopsy. It's like, okay. And I actually thought of this. It was like, you know, I was sitting there eating dinner, and I don't know why it popped in my head, but I was like, you know what? Every laugh we shared, every thought he had, every movie we saw, every song we heard, some guy that works for the state's weighing that right now in his hand. And I just, how in the hell did we get to this point? And then the next day, it hit me, these veterans are still out there going through this. Mm-hmm. And then it became not so much about just my son. It was like, are we getting ready to see another one? So I started calling every state representative, every elected official I could get on the phone, and saying, look, here's what happened. You've still got veterans out there under these suppressed circumstances. Somebody needs to do something before something else happens. And that's, Brian, when I set the grief aside and started working towards something else.
Mm-hmm.
And which that was my instinct, but I shouldn't have done it, because the longer you put off grief, the harder it hits you. But that was the first thing I started doing while I was still waiting for his body to be released, was we need to let people know what's going on out there now. So that's where I just kind of picked up the torch and started trying to carry it a little bit after his video.
Was the director held accountable for what happened to John and ultimately for causing John's death?
Well, we actually, after a few weeks, right before Christmas, it was around December 23rd, me and my wife and my ex-wife and her sister met with the director of the Tennessee Valley Healthcare System. Great person. I find she had only been in that position 90 days when this happened. So she still was trying to figure out what was going on between this VA and several others. So I put no fault on her whatsoever. And she was so kind, and she came right out and told me. I said, I want to see the results, the report of the investigation, which was just they only did a root cause analysis, which is, companies do that all the time, trying to figure out where their weak spots are, how to fix this, how to fix that. And she told me, she said, no, you won't be able to see it because it's on a private facility.
So no transparency, no accountability, just
no. And I told her, I said,
yeah,
I want 5 jobs. I'm not going to rest till I have 5 jobs. And her exact quote was, well, it's like turning a battleship. It's slow, but eventually it gets turned around. She said, I would like to name the new building after John, because of what he done has brought improvements to that program.
Oh, absolutely.
And she's the one that asked me, and I said, can I think about it overnight and get back with you? So like I said, she was great about it. But as of today, I got to be honest with you, Brian, I can't say that anybody lost their jobs.
Folks, we're joined by David Toombs, the father of Sgt John Toombs, who tragically took his life the day before Thanksgiving on a VA hospital, in a VA hospital campus in Tennessee, the day before Thanksgiving in 2016. He tragically took his own life at the VA hospital for a reason. He did not want to leave the VA hospital. He was there for help. He was inpatient. He was kicked out of a program. And really, at the end of the day, this is about as egregious as it gets. Folks, we are not anti-VA here. Look, the VA has done a lot of good over the years, okay? John slipped through the cracks, and he became a statistic on the side you do not want to be on. And like I've always said, I believe the clinicians and the doctors in the VA, I believe the majority of them have their hearts in their minds in the right place. But sometimes these things happen. And when they happen, we have to correct them. Because if we don't correct them, it will continue to happen over and over and over again. Sir, you have become an advocate in this country for veteran suicide prevention. You have also worked very hard in Congress, where I had the honor and the pleasure to meet you, to carry on this relationship from the story that I went through in my own personal hardship in the VA. And since we've become good friends, we've stayed in touch, we've helped each other, and we've both been there for each other when we needed someone to talk to, sir. So you are a very honorable man. And for everything that you have been through and still continue to go through day in and day out, it just truly speaks about your character, on who you are as a father. And I want you to share with our audience a little bit here on where we are right now with renaming this VA hospital after Sgt John Toombs. And, ultimately, I know it does take an act of Congress to do such things. Share with our audience where we are right now on renaming this hospital and how our listeners can help.
Well, the bill has been presented 3 times. Currently, it was reissued, I think, October last year. Congressman Scott Desjardins, Republican in Tennessee, reissued under H.R. 1737. I talked with organizations about support, different veterans organizations around the country. We've got a lot of good support. It's in the Veteran Subcommittee on Health, and it's just been sitting there since then. And the last I heard from the congressman's office was the 2 previous times, all the Tennessee veterans organizations agreed to support the bill, but for some reason, which nobody can understand, this time the veterans organization, Brian.
The American Legion?
American Legion voted not to support the bill.
Incredible. And this is after you already have the support of the VFW, the DAV, AMVETS.
Yes, and other organizations. And I was told that the bill couldn't move until they voted to support it. And apparently the congressman's office approached them about taking another vote on it, and they refused. And I just can't help but wonder. I got to be honest with you. We do agree. The VA have a lot of good people that do a lot of good work. I am not an opponent. I'm a proponent of the VA. But there are people that got their fingers smacked because this happened with John, and they still have reaches. And I just kind of wonder if maybe one of them is part of the reason the bill got turned down. I don't know. I haven't been told that. Nobody says anything. So right now it's sitting in the Veteran Subcommittee on Health.
You have had 3 bills introduced in Congress, in the 115th Congress, the 116th Congress, as well as the 117th Congress, where we have an active bill, H.R. 1737, in the House. Folks, please pick up your phone today and call your congressman, call your senator, and let them know that they need to support and sign on to H.R. 1737 today without delay. Sgt John Toombs deserves to have this hospital, this VA hospital, named in his name for all the work he has really done. John Toombs has become a champion in the veteran community, folks, and he is not even with us any longer. But his memory is here with us, and we will never forget the struggles that he went through and everything that he did to try to get the help he needed. But again, when these veterans fall through the cracks, like Sgt Toombs did, again, there needs to be accountability, there needs to be transparency, and there needs to be recourse in place. And I do believe that if we can successfully rename this VA hospital building after Sgt Toombs, that will be our victory. Okay, saying that, you know what, we win here because we are showing the world that that despite the hardship and everything that has happened to this man, his name will be on that building for us all to never forget. That name will be something that we can look at and we can remember. And if these veterans get kicked out, they know not to take no for an answer and do whatever it needs to be to get back in that facility, even if it requires them being arrested by VA police, because that is what they need. And unfortunately, that never happened for your son. And it makes me sick. It makes me ill. It breaks my heart. I just don't have the words to describe everything that your family and yourself, Sir David, have been through. So you have this bill in the 117th Congress now. Where are we at with this? I mean, you said, we're in the subcommittee on health. Have you had any co-sponsors sign on to this bill, or is there going to be any hearings on this bill upcoming?
Well, there's 9 co-sponsors on this bill. One of them actually from Florida. Most all of them from Tennessee, Democratic and Republican. And I think it's might be Representative Staub from Florida, and I think he's actually on the committee on health. And it's just, I've called months ago. I called every congressman that I could think of. I even, left a message with Congressman Jody Arrington there in Texas, and different ones. I mean, I have a list of them saying, could you please support? And I explained to them that all the veterans that were there with my son, after they were able to speak to me, all of them said the same thing. He was a hero. If we were in combat, he throwed himself on a grenade because it brought to light problems that we were having, and it changed everything for us. And they all
really has.
I even had his funeral. One of the veterans, which I stayed in touch with for a couple of years, who we lost a couple of Octobers ago, he had just gotten out of the program the day before John's funeral, and he approached me, and he was wearing sunglasses because he was crying. And he told me, he said, "Mr. Toombs," he goes, "I just want to hug you because your son is a hero." What he done, he said, we were so oppressed. And after he done what he done, things changed. And we were able to actually start, feeling free about getting the help that we went there for, instead of being afraid to ask for things.
Yes.
And
he sacrificed his body to protect 20.2 million American veterans in this country. And I know what happened has brought about a lot of change in the processing on when veterans do check themselves into these VA mental hospitals and asking for help. I know the protocols have changed since John's death, but again, this trend still does continue to happen. And folks, we need to prevent it. Is there anything that you can share, Dave, just as a father, to veterans that are listening to this program right now that need help, and they may be listening to this and they say, "You know what? I'm John. I am Sgt Toombs right now." What can you say to them as a father right now to get into their head a little bit, to help them, to help them through their hard times right now of post-traumatic stress?
Well, Brian, I've actually had the conversation with 3 or 4 actual veterans that was in the same position John was in. And I told them something John told me when he was studying to be a smart recovery counselor. And he said, "Did you know that within 10 years, PTSD is going to be the most widespread disease in America, because it affects people. If it would affect one person, then it's going to affect another person. And because it affected another person, and it's a chain reaction, and it's not a communicable disease." And like when I spoke at John's funeral, I looked out at close to 200, over 200 people, and it dawned on me, John's death not just affected me, it's affected 200 something people.
Oh, it's a lot more than that.
And,
Yes, sir. What you mean?
And I tell them, I said, look, there's the one word that when the director asked me if she could name the building after John, and I replied back to her, I said, can you please include the word hope? Because that's the most important word. Is you can give up, but if you don't give up hope, you haven't given up. Things change every day. We evolve every day. We have bad days. We may want to put a gun in our mouth. We have good days where we want to help somebody. It's human nature. We have good and bad. But as long as you keep your hope, those days are going to change every time you wake up. You don't give up hope. You reach out and talk to somebody. And just, and it's not just veterans. It's if the kid next door has been bullied and he comes home from school, you can look at somebody and tell they've had a bad day. Just talk to them. See what's going on in their head.
Yep.
And that's like John said, PTSD is a non-communicable disease that spreads. And once it grabs hold of you, of course, then you got depression and anxiety, and it just accumulates and builds.
Yeah, it snowballs, and and it becomes a runaway train. And once that train gets on its tracks, it is hard to get that train back on its tracks when all that steam is going. And when that doesn't happen, that train collides, it wrecks. And we have got rail cars all over the place, and we begin to pick up the pieces. And those pieces aren't always picked up successfully. And sometimes a lot of these suicides do end up in tragic type situations. Sir, you are a champion in the veteran community. You have put yourself out there for over 6 years now. You have saved lives. There is no doubt in my military mind that you, sir, have saved lives, and you are also a champion, and you are a voice of change, a positive voice of change. And the scary thing about this is that how can we recognize this? Because it was almost unrecognizable. You spoke to John the night before this happened. And unfortunately, we couldn't do anything about it, and a lot of people can't. How can we recognize this?
And well, that's just it. After John's death, I had to take a crash course on PTSD and the American legal system, and I realized that John had been showing signs of PTSD building since 2014 or 2013. But I didn't know what PTSD was. When I started adding up things that he had done, and then I started reading the VA DOD report that came out in 2010, a study on veteran suicide. And at that point, in 2010, Brian, they recognized 22 plus per day taking their lives. Okay. And when I started reading all these pages, it started coming to me, okay, John did this, John did that. And I never saw it. But it's like, when they start getting quiet and they they stay by themselves, they have a tendency just to be loners. Their drinking may pick up. Their substance abuse may pick up. Money doesn't mean anything anymore. They could go into a bar with $100 and buy 4 $20 shots. It doesn't matter. Their belongings doesn't mean anything to them anymore. They can give stuff away. Their appearance starts to, they lose confidence, and their appearance starts to go down. You literally, to put it in a short term, you're kind of watching somebody deteriorate. And it can take it may not be overnight, it may be over a couple of years. But you're watching a deterioration of a person. And it all starts mentally. and then branches out to, monetary things, friendships, family, appearance, uh, and you know, like I said, John went through all that, but I had no idea what it meant.
Those are all very, very good points, and those are all very good signs for folks that, I mean, there could be a mom or a dad on here right now listening to this program and perhaps see these effects of their own son or daughter that can say, hey, look, we need to get, our kid help. And the very sad thing about this is, look, why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because we're sending our men and women to war to fight these political wars. They come home broken. And when they sign up on that dotted line, the United States of America is sworn to protect these veterans after they get out of the military. And a lot of the times the veterans don't get in return of what they signed up for when they signed that blank check to the United States of America. And it is sad and it is disturbing that we can waste billions and trillions of dollars overseas and we still can't figure out how to effectively treat veterans that are suffering mightily due to the wounds of war. Now, sir, it has been an honor for you to be on my program today. And
Brian, thank you. And before we go, I just wanted John's with us right here.
Right there in that Folgers can?
Yes, sir.
Explain that.
Well, John specified in his suicide note, either have close coffee or burn me. I always thought it was creepy as F to stand around and stare at a dead person. And by the time I was able to get his body, because they'd given him the wrong name, I couldn't even view him. Apparently he was in such bad shape, they had to send him straight to be cremated. And on the day of the funeral, I was staring at this real nice urn for the funeral, and it dawned on me how much we laughed at the Big Lebowski when they put Donnie's ashes in the coffee can and went to throw them, and it blew back on them in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I looked at that urn, and that's one of the things I said in front of the people attending the funeral was, John would probably say, why'd you use that fancy urn? Why didn't you just put me in a coffee can? Well, for 2 weeks after the funeral, I could not go back and get his ashes. I just couldn't do it. Until finally one day I said, I've got to go get John. And I went to a Walmart, bought their biggest can of coffee, emptied it off in some freezer bags. And of course they had his ashes in a bag at the funeral home. And I stuck the bag in the coffee can with $2 and 2 cigarettes. Because he was always saying, if you got a couple cigarettes I can bum, or you have a couple dollars I can borrow. And when I carried him out of the funeral home in this coffee can, and I opened the door to my truck, it hit me. This is the first time I've carried my son and put him in the seat of the truck since he was 2 years old. And I literally put a seatbelt on the coffee can and brought him home.
Man, you're really pulling on my heartstrings. This is I've known you for years and years. I know the story, and every time I hear this, it's just so sad and so avoidable, and this should have never happened. And your son is with you, and he is with us right now, and you are honoring his last words. Sir, I want to close this out, and I want everybody out there to stop what they're doing and contact your member of Congress today. or your U.S. senators and have them support and sign on to H.R. 1737 in an effort to name the VA hospital where this tragically happened in the honor and to name it after Sgt John Toombs, who has become a champion of combating veteran suicide.
And real quick, if you don't mind me, Brian, the building that they're wanting to name after him is actually the building that he took his life in when it was under construction.
Well, he deserves his name to be on that building, and I think he chose it there for a reason. That building was in the stages of construction, and John was in his final stage of destruction. And when you marry those two up, his name needs to be on that building, again, to serve as a reminder of everybody, clinicians, doctors, veterans, civilians, that man died right there doing the right thing in his mind to protect veterans and to ensure that this never happens again. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Toombs.
Thank you, Brian. My pleasure.
We sincerely appreciate you and the work that you do every day in the veteran community in the honor of your son, Sgt John Toombs. For Tuesdays with Tally, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.